Hello, I'm Penny Herron, and I am demonstrating the Sweet and Sassy templates created by Phyllis Anderson for Creative Grids. The Sweet and Sassy templates by Phyllis Anderson is a series of 3 rhombus shapes. Each package includes the rhombus in a large size, a medium size, and a small size. Each template includes holes drilled so that you can mark the seam allowance through the template, and black markings that you place on the seam lines so that you can line them up with pieced units to create diamond shapes. In this quilt, Sayer Bear, Phyllis used the large template and simply cut out her diamonds and pieced them in rows diagonally to create this beautiful quilt. She added appliques to it and a vase of flowers at the bottom to add even more impact. And if you notice, the top is the diamond shapes. She did her binding so it has inset points here, and it made a beautiful finish to this quilt. That is using the large diamond, but you could also make a smaller version using the medium or the small rhombus shapes. Phyllis Anderson designed Maddie B as a quilt where the rhombus shape is pieced out of strips of fabric. In this case, she made a scrappy version, so she sewed 2 2-inch strips together and then cut with the rhombus shapes the individual pieces and sewed them together to create this quilt. If you notice, this same shape was used to cut the sashings that are between the blocks, and so the diamonds are sewn together with this sashing strip that is the exact same width as one set of these diamonds. So it goes together very easily. The large template in this quilt is made out of the larger rhombus. You take the same rhombus and cut it from point to point on the length, and those are the side setting triangles on the sides. You cut it horizontally to create the side setting triangles on the top and the bottom. So everything can be done with the 3 sets of templates. When you sew these strips together, you end up with little scraps, and those little scraps are sewn together to create a miniature version of the quilt you just created. This is what you use the small rhombus shape for. This is right here. This is also how you cut your sashing strips, and these are cut out of the 2-inch size this time, and that gives you extra room so that these side setting triangles and top and bottom setting triangles can either float so you don't have to worry about cutting off your points and be trimmed later, or you can cut them down 1/4 inch away from all of your points so everything fits together beautifully. To create the diamonds that are in the Maddie B quilt, I cut 2-inch strips of coordinating fabrics and sewed them together into one piece. Then you take the number 2 rhombus shape and place it on that strip set so that the black line that runs down through the center of the template is placed on the seam line. Then I simply rotary cut as I move these along, and I'll get pieces that look exactly like this. The holes that are in the template are 1/4 inch away from the outside edge, and those are used to mark your seam lines. So on the back of my work, I'm going to place the rhombus shape and mark through there with a black pencil or any kind of water-soluble marker that shows well in the fabrics, so that when I pin these together and I am matching a seam that is 1/4 inch in from the outside edge, as you notice, my top and bottoms are going to overlap a little bit. So I can stick a pin in there, and in this piece you can see where I marked my black dots for my seam lines, and then I stitched my 1/4 inch all the way down. When I open this up, I have a perfect match in the center. Now that I have this one created, I simply press the seam. You can press to the side or open. I prefer to press them open because it alleviates bulk. And you place it like this. Then I can place my template. Again, I'm lining up the black lines horizontally and vertically on my pieced unit. And when I rotary cut the 2 sides, I'm going to end up with 2 small pieces. At the top and the bottom, I'm just going to shave off a little bit, which just gives you a little bit of a fudge factor. If you are working with pre-cut 2.5-inch strips, many times they are pinked and those edges are not, they aren't as accurate as cuts of 2.5 inches that you do yourself with a rotary cutter. So it gives you a little bit of a fudge factor, so you can trim that and it'll be the exact size you need. When I cut these sides, I'm going to end up with units that look like this. Now these units, once again, I can place them and use my shape to mark my 1/4 inch seam allowance on both pieces. Then I can put a pin through those like this. And again, here are my 3 marks. I will sew those to create a miniature version of what I just did to make the baby quilt, the baby version of Maddie B's. In that case, I'm going to end up with a piece like this because see, here are my 2-piece units. So this is, again, pressed, the seams open. When I place this down and use my number 1 template and place it on here, see how my seam lines match up perfectly? I can rotary cut the entire way around the template and I will end up with my little diamonds. Now I can also cut my sashing strips with the same rhombus shape. If you notice, this is my diamond. For my sashing strips, I cut them out of the rhombus shape right here, and it's just half of it. And this ends up being the exact width of this. So when I piece my quilt in rows, I'm going to have all of my sashing strips. These are 2-inch strips. So when I piece my rows this way, I sewed a 2-inch strip here, and then I used the large rhombus shape to cut diamonds for the tops, which are taking the large rhombus and cutting it in half horizontally. When I do that out of these shapes, I end up getting a shape like this. So I can place these here to finish off my rows, but if you notice, the top of the quilt is different from the side. Because the side, I have to take the same diamond, but this time I'm going to cut it vertically, and those shapes are going to fit on the side like this. In her pattern, she tells you how to cut the corners so that that will work also using the different templates. See how easy this is to get everything to go together? And it's simple strip piecing from here on out. It goes together so beautifully, and it's a very fun quilt to make, and your scraps are made into another beautiful version, a miniature version, or a doll quilt for a child. Now if you notice, these float. So I can choose to trim the quilt a 1/2 inch away from here so I don't have to worry about losing all of my points, or I can take a Creative Grids ruler, they have the 1/4 inch marked on one side, and place it on here between 2 adjoining points of the rhombuses and rotary cut a 1/4 inch away. So then when I add my borders, everything is going to line up on the outside edge.